Hello, our favorite humans. Welcome to Bronx Tales with your host, Bronxy B. And me, I'm Logan. Thank you for being here. I want to go over this sneak peek into the Prime Docuseries that is airing tomorrow, July 11th. As I found Annie Elise, whose channel will be linked below, she got the information early. It sounds like quite a bit early. She got this information and she did basically a episode talking about what's going to be released in tomorrow's Prime docuseries. Please keep in mind that she is basically a guilter and does report from the view of mainstream media or the prosecution. So take that with a grain of salt. But inside her episode, she did give some new details that we didn't really know from the beginning. We had some speculation, but now we know a little bit more as seen into this Prime docuseries episode. If you don't know who Annie Elise is, she does report basically from the view of the prosecution or mainstream media, technically a guilter, but she did give some details that we didn't really know. I don't think she probably gave all the details in this episode, but more like a sneak peek. So I'm just going to shorten her version down a little bit. As we know, this episode is called One Night in Idaho. It is on Amazon Prime. It is airing tomorrow, July 11th. And as we know, the Gonsalves family decided not to participate in this docuseries. She basically starts in explaining what the families were doing the weekend before because it was family weekend. And then she goes into basically the call that Dylan made to Emily and how Emily didn't really take her serious and was kind of joking. And she was saying, oh, do you want me to bring my pepper spray? Like, whatever. And how then Hunter and Emily walked over to the house to check things out for the roommates that were suddenly fearful again. And then goes into basically the 911 call. And it's noted that Dylan says, apparently, I can't believe somebody would do this. So she knew.
Dylan made a comment of, I can't believe somebody would do this. And I whispered to Emily, where's Xana? And she said, she's inside. And I think she's dead.
I think all I wanted was to go wake Xana up. And I knew it wasn't going to happen.
Hunter Chapin then gets woken up by, I believe, Hunter Johnson. And Hunter Chapin goes over to the house. As Annie reported, and as I noticed as well, Hunter Chapin has like a nervous laugh. I don't think he's laughing because he thinks it's funny. I think it's more like a coping mechanism when he's speaking.
And Hunter shares about what that moment was like when he found out. And I just want to mention before I play this clip, he does kind of laugh while he's speaking and recounting this, but it's almost this laugh of discomfort and disbelief, almost as though to this very day he still doesn't think that it's real. He doesn't, like in those moments, he didn't think that it was real. He also calls his sister, Maisie, the other triplet of the three of them, and he tells her that she needs to come over to Xana's house, although he does not give her specifics as to why.
So I was walking over to the King Road house. I saw a group of people sitting on the ground, and it's all the people I've been hanging out with. And they all just had this look in their face when I walked up, like the world had ended.
I remember seeing Hunter walking up, and I remember us all turning and being like, oh my God, like somebody's going to have to tell him what just happened.
I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, where's Ethan? And they're like, Ethan's not here anymore. What do you mean Ethan's not here anymore? I was like, well, where'd he go? And they're like, your brother's dead. I was like, that can't be true. And then Hunter Johnson was like, I think Xana, Ethan were murdered last night. Didn't even know how to respond to it. Because it's like so unreal that someone I had spent almost every minute of my life with. I don't even know. Just die. The first person I called was Maisie.
Then it goes on to kind of explain a little bit into some of our questions as far as when did they realize Kaylee and Maddie weren't coming downstairs, or what happened to them and if they were okay. And it seems like it did take quite a while for anybody to even go, oh, what about Kaylee and Maddie?
Then it finally clicked. Oh my gosh, where's Kaylee and Maddie? Their phones are pinging in there. Their phones are inside that house.
We didn't know if they were home. We didn't know if they were in there. We didn't know anything. We couldn't get a hold of them. I was sitting next to Dylan, and she really wanted to find out where they were, and we never went up there.
They take a moment then and stop and step back and say, well, what about Kaylee? What about Maddie?
It sounds like Jake, Maddie's boyfriend, calls Maddie's mom, and that is how she finds out. Now, Maddie's mom was actually on her way to Maddie's house. She did not know that Maddie was one of the victims, and it seems like it took quite a while for her to find out that day as well, that Maddie was actually a victim. Maddie's mom thought there was just something that had happened to Ethan and Xana. There seemed to be 2 vandal alerts, one basically saying something happened on King Road, stay away from the area, and then a little bit later was another vandal alert which reported there were 4 homicides. That's when most people got word that Kaylee and Maddie had also been victims to the homicide, as most of them didn't know where they were at or what happened to Kaylee and Maddie. And a lot of people found out that way, including Maddie's mom.
They get the next alert.
We got another vandal alert.
4 students found dead.
Quadruple murder.
And we look at the text and we're all like, what? Because nobody had said anything to us.
That was before the cops even told us that Maddie and Kaylee had passed and that they were in there.
I don't even know if I looked at my phone or if somebody showed me. But people, they were like, some of the girls started like yelling at the police guys.
I show him my phone and I go, what the fuck is this? And he just looked at me, he like grabs my phone and he's like, I didn't even know they were sending this. I'm so sorry. And we were like, well, what does this mean? He was like, all 4 of them.
It's stated later that Hunter did absolutely see the crime scene in Xana's room. He did see the blood. Apparently, he just didn't state it to anybody because he was basically, as they say, shielding him, trying to think before he speaks, I guess. It sounds like some friends and people in the area did go down to the police station, but not to be questioned. They were under 0 suspicion, none of them. It was just to kind of go over a timeline. And then Maddie's mom goes on to talk about her grieving process and how she doesn't really have room for hate in her heart regardless, and how she doesn't want to spend any time hating or being angry, and that it's taken her a long time to get to this point of even being able to speak about it or really moving on with her life, if you want to put it that way. Not that you can move on from something like this, but just getting back into a regular routine she talks about. It sounds like mostly all of the family and friends stayed in a hotel on the night of the 13th. And he goes on to report that it sounds like all of the friends were getting together and trying to put together a timeline. You know, what happened from the beginning of the 12th into the 13th, the entire day, as everybody, it was a game day, everybody was partying, people were everywhere, and kind of where was everybody? When did everybody get home? And then there was the first press release informing everybody that it was a stabbing. And then there's the short clip of coroner / librarian / dog groomer / prosecutor / defense attorney / insurance agent / everything else in the town, the infamous Catherine Mabbitt. She has a little clip in there as well, one that we've already seen. And then they start talking about the grub truck video and how everybody was scrutinizing everybody and everything within that video, trying to find clues. And then they talk about the second press release and how it was basically to clear Jack and Hunter, I guess, basically. And then apparently later in the evening on December 29th, there were phone calls to the family informing them that they have a suspect and they have arrested him or are about to arrest him. Then it goes on to talk about the arrest of Brian Koberger.
They called the families of all of the victims, and they shared some very important news.
It was after 11 o'clock. I was already in bed. And the officer said, "Don't tell anyone, but we have the suspect in custody."
I went to my friend's house and we all were like, "Do you know who he is? Do we know who he is?" And none of us knew.
My first reaction was, who the hell is this guy? He's just this random person that has nothing to do with any of our lives.
Y'all now know the name of the person who's been charged with these offenses. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward.
I was told that they had made an arrest, someone named Brian. I was like, Brian? It's like, I've never even heard of a Brian.
Like, why would this random guy from Pullman that no one's met before do this?
Then they show clips of some of Brian Koberger's past associates or friends or acquaintances and what they have to say. And they talk about Brian Koberger, where he lived, and information on him. They go in to talk about when people first saw Brian Koberger and what their reaction was when they first saw him in court as the suspect and person who was being accused of this crime.
Courtroom. When they opened the doors, a chill swept through the courtroom. It was just a really eerie, surreal feeling to see him for the first time.
Brian Koberger's classmates then speak on him from DeSales University.
In the biology room, we were all being paired up for this long project that we were about to do. We're like picking partners, and I see this guy standing alone with his leather jacket on, and he's like just kind of being quiet. I'm the type of guy that says, "Hey buddy, do you want to be my partner?" This guy is incredibly smart, incredibly detail oriented, and he is honestly a pleasure to work with. Do you need help with A? Do you need help with B? Bouncing ideas off each other, fact checking each other.
I took a few classes with Brian Koberger. He was also a forensic psychology major. We saw him maybe as the smarter student. I remember there was a class where I actually tried to cheat off his test. I don't tell a lot of people that, but I tried to cheat off his test because I knew he always did amazing in our psychology classes.
He seemed to be a lonely guy. I definitely invited him to a party one time and he said no. I can remember that.
He commuted to DeSales. So it was kind of hard to learn who Brian was.
He is an oddball. He is smart, but he's like a robot. Purely based off the fact of his social inability to perform in a normal human manner. I can absolutely see someone like him being involved in something like this.
Then it goes into the entire Kathleen Ramsland thing, which was Brian's old teacher, the one that Steve Gonsalves said that she taught Brian how to kill, which is ridiculous. And then they mention Brian's survey online as well for one of his criminal classes. They then go on to talk about Brian Koberger and how he applied at the police station, and the chief of police over there speaks on this as well.
Previous to my employment at Washington State University, I was the chief of police for the city of Pullman. We had a program where a WSU criminal justice PhD student would do research and assistance for us. So I interviewed Brian Koberger. I know that he had an interest in the mind of a person who commits crimes, their motivation and how they feel. They seemed maybe a little bit awkward talking with him. His communication style was not like a fluid conversation necessarily where he spoke easily. It was a little bit more stuttered, I guess. With a researcher and a law enforcement agency, a huge factor is developing trust. And that was one area where I felt he might fall short. He did not get the job.
They shortly talk about Brian Koberger's childhood, which of course is always going to be talked about in a negative light by these people. Then the probable cause affidavit comes out, and obviously we know everything in there. They also then still continue to go upon this inaccuracy of saying Brian Koberger changed his license plate to disguise his car in case they had his license plate, which we know is false. We know that Brian Koberger changed his license plates because they were expiring. They talk about the bolo that was sent out to officers only on this white car and how magically the first car that they came upon was Brian Koberger's. They talk about the Papa Rodgers account and then continues on to a very, in my opinion, biased opinion of a discussion on Brian Koberger. They touch on the trip with Brian Koberger and his father, Michael Koberger, the trip that was already planned from Washington to Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving break, and then Brian Koberger's arrest in his parents' home in Pennsylvania.
Search warrant, come to the door! A break in the case that has gripped this nation.
Authorities have arrested a suspect in Pennsylvania.
Koberger reportedly had a blank stare as he was arrested and also asked if anyone else had been taken into custody.
Mr. Koberger was found in the kitchen area wearing latex gloves and apparently was taking his personal trash and putting it into separate Ziploc baggies.
The police took computers. They have hard drives. They took black clothing. They took gloves, masks.
There were no clothes at the apartment. It just was almost vacant. It looked like he had planned not to come back.
A neighbor also speaks. A neighbor from 1122 King Road says that he left his apartment at about 4 a.m. walking by the 1122 King Road house and said that everything seemed to be very quiet.
I had left an apartment complex near the King Road house at 4 a.m. And I remembered thinking to myself that it was eerily quiet. Usually you can see the last remnants of people leaving a party, but it was silent.
Then she goes in to talk about what Dylan was doing around the time of the crime. And still we have a little bit of misinformation, I think, because I think they do talk about her sleeping, which, as we know now, didn't happen. And they also touch on how we knew it before, as everybody was in the room talking about going out again. And it sounds like that's not true, that Dylan heard them on the couch talking about going out again.
A few weeks after that night, Dylan had expressed to me what happened. She heard Kaylee and Maddie come home, and she heard them chit-chatting on the couch for a while. The couch was on the wall of her bedroom, and she was pretty much sleeping through it.
The surviving roommates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, confirmed that all members of the King Road residence were asleep by 4 a.m. That's with the exception of Xana Kernodle at 4 a.m. DoorDash drops off an order for Xana.
At 4:05 a.m., a white Elantra is seen driving in front of the King Road house, making a turn and then parking.
And cell phone data shows that Xana was on TikTok around 4:12 a.m.
That is when Dylan hears some commotion kind of upstairs. She thought she heard someone say, "There's someone here." She looked out of her bedroom door on the second floor and didn't see anything.
Dylan said that she remembered hearing crying.
And she thought she heard a male voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you."
Video from next door at 4:17 a.m. captures the sound of a whimper and a loud thud. A dog barking can also be heard on the footage.
Dylan opens her door for a third time, and she describes seeing a man with bushy eyebrows.
This person walked past her bedroom and out the sliding glass door of the back room.
She said that she just scaredly closed the door.
They explain how it came about for Dylan to go down to Bethany's room.
Eventually, she just decided to go for it. And she made a run for it to Bethany's room down in the basement. Dylan was like, "Did you hear any of that?" And Heather was like, "No." And so I think that Dylan was probably just like, "I must have imagined it. And if you didn't hear anything, then let's go to bed together safely."
Which I'm still not sure that happened, or it happened that way. And how Dylan was the only one who saw him and saw him go out the back, which is contradictory already to what the state says. And also then, how did we get the statement that Bethany saw a naked man putting clothes into a garbage bag, which, don't get me started, I don't know how Brian Koberger could by himself carry around a knife, a garbage bag, and a container while completely covered in blood and not get it anywhere else. They talked about when the police entered the house for the first time and what that was like for them.
Police entered the house and went up to the second floor. They went into Xana's bedroom and found her and Ethan dead with stab wounds. Police then went up to the third floor and into Maddie's bedroom, where they found both Maddie and Kaylee in Maddie's bed, dead with multiple stab wounds.
They went a little bit more in depth as far as Elliot Rodger character, who was an incel who committed several atrocious homicides. And they did talk about how Bryan Kohberger did actually study him, but it sounds like the entire class studied Elliot Rodger. It's not, they're making it seem like Bryan Kohberger had this fascination with Elliot Rodger, and then that's how it's connected to the account Papa Rodger. But if you listen closely, the whole class studied Elliot Rodger. It wasn't just Bryan Kohberger. It sounds like it was the entire class. And one of the girls said, one of the female classmates said, you know, she was very emotional when studying Elliot Rodger, and Bryan Kohberger just didn't seem to have the same emotions that she had. Well, he's got autism spectrum disorder. I mean, when are we going to give up on this he has no emotion thing? That sounds like a baseline for him. That sounds like his normal. And not to be mistaken for being odd or weird. That's just his normal. So it sounds like they tried to paint him in the light of being obsessed with this Elliot Rodger, when really it was just the class studying Elliot Rodger.
That Bryan did in fact study Elliot Rodger. This is brand new information that had never been released before. We had heard that he had studied serial killers, but we had never heard that he studied Elliot. Now here's Bryan's former classmates sharing those details.
At DeSales University, some of the people that Bryan and I studied that were serial killers were Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ed Kempfer, and Elliot Rodger. So Elliot Rodger, he was a young man in college that was basically jaded and hated his life because he lacked the attention from friends, family, and most of all, women. So Elliot Rodger, one day, first he invited some people over that he claimed to be friends with. He stabbed them to death. He then went out with firearms to a sorority and killed a number of women in the sorority. He then drove around, shot multiple other people in public, and he ended his own life in his vehicle. But after the fact, there was a written manifesto, and he basically tells you, this is what I did, this is why I did it.
Rodger's sexist rants are part of a culture that breeds violence against women.
Rodger wrote, all of those beautiful girls I've desired so much in my life, but can never have because they despise and loathe me. I will destroy.
If you listen to some of the manifestos of Elliot Rodger, he talks about hating all the girls from Alpha Phi, the same sorority that Kaylee was in.
Bryan was interested in a lot of things that we learned, but he did have more of an interest in Elliot Rodger. I talked to other girls in the class where we were all bothered by what Elliot Rodger did, but Bryan did not seem bothered.
Incel, in my professional opinion, this is a particularly dangerous version of misogyny, because incel communities have this presence in an online space. They can say things and provide support for things that perhaps they wouldn't do in a face-to-face context, because they would be concerned about what the social consequences or the repercussions would look like.
And then it sounds like they go into the aftermath of the crime and how it's affected everybody and what's going to happen from here. And that sounds to be the basis of this episode of the Prime Docuseries that's going to air tomorrow, July 11th. That is just a very short rundown of the sneak peek that Elise gave us. Again, keep in mind that she is saying this from the view of basically the state and mainstream media and the point of view of friends and family. So it is a little bit biased, as she is known to be a guilter, if you want to put a label on it, I guess. I'm still waiting to see if there's any details that we can pick up on that are different than what they're trying to make it sound like. So I am still eager to watch this video, and I hope that there's maybe some more in it that Annie didn't mention during the sneak peek that she was given. Other than that, that's what we have for you right now. Thank you for joining us. Give us a like and subscribe. Do something nice for yourself today. Be kind, but more importantly, be kind to your dog. Bye, guys.